Move them back. All of them. Rook's voice cut through the radio like a blade. I want those Americans bleeding before sunrise. That single order sealed the fate of 9 men who had no idea they were already being hunted. If you're watching this right now, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, because this story is going to take you somewhere you won't forget. Drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this has traveled. Now stay with me. Every second of what happened next matters. Commander Ryan Cole had run 31 missions in 11 years without once feeling like the target. He was the kind of man who walked into silence and read it the way most people read a newspaper, fluently, quickly, and with an eye for what wasn't being said. He trusted his instincts the way other men trusted their wives. Absolutely. Without condition. And tonight, standing at the tree line with his 9-man SEAL unit fanned out behind him, every instinct he had was screaming. He pressed his fist into the air and the team froze. Nothing moved ahead of him. Nothing made a sound. And that was exactly the problem. Oregon's coastal forest in November was alive. It was always alive when threading through the canopy, animals shifting in the undergrowth, the constant low percussion of the Pacific pressing against the cliffs 2 miles west. But right now, inside a quarter-mile radius of their position, the forest had gone completely unnervingly still. Cole pulled his radio to his lips and kept his voice at a breath. Ghost 6, check your 9 o'clock. Anything moving? Petty Officer Derek Tan's voice came back just as quiet. Negative, Commander, but I don't like it. Feels like the trees are holding their breath. That's poetry, Tan. I need intel. That is intel. Cole almost smiled. Almost. He brought his night optics up and swept the ridgeline ahead slow and methodical. The intelligence brief had told them this was a transit corridor, a smuggling lane used by a trafficking network running weapons north toward the Canadian border. The mission was straightforward: on paper, infiltrate, locate the cache, photograph the route markers, extract, clean. No engagement, no footprint, ghost work. The problem with ghost work was that sometimes ghosts weren't the only thing hiding in the dark. His earpiece crackled, and Lieutenant Marcus Hale moved up beside him, keeping low. His broad shoulders folded into the kind of disciplined stillness that took years to build. Hale was Cole's right arm on every operation, steady, tactical, and almost irritatingly calm under pressure. But right now, Hale's jaw was tight. We're 20 minutes behind the infiltration window, Hale said. Command is already asking for position confirmation. Tell them we're holding. They're not going to like that. They're not here. Cole lowered the optics and turned to look at Hale directly. Something's off. This route should have had at minimum 2 roving sentries by now. We've seen nothing. No movement, no radio chatter, nothing. Hale was quiet for a moment. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Cole finished the line and looked back at the tree line. Fan the team out another 30 meters each direction. I want eyes on the north and south flanks before we advance a single step. Hale moved without a word. He was good at that. Cole turned back to the darkness ahead and let himself feel it, the weight of the silence, the particular texture of a forest that wasn't behaving the way it should. Something is waiting, he thought. The question is how long it's been waiting. The team repositioned with the kind of quiet that only comes from years of working together in the dark. These were not ordinary men. Petty Officer First Class Derek Tan was the unit's fastest mover, wiry, relentless with reflexes that made other operators feel slightly inadequate. Chief Petty Officer James Vero carried the communication equipment and had a secondary gift for reading ambient radio frequency interference that had saved them more than once. Petty Officer Second Class Anton Webb was their breacher, quiet as a stone wall and built like one. The rest of the team filled in the corners of the formation with the same competence, the same silence, the same controlled readiness. They were good. They were very good. And they were already surrounded. They just didn't know it yet. Vero moved up to Cole's position with the look of a man who had bad news and was deciding how to arrange it. He held up the communications unit and tilted the screen. The signal bars were dropping. Not gone dropping, like something was bleeding the frequency. We've got interference, Vero said. Not natural. Someone's pushing a narrowband block in our operating frequency range. Cole felt the information land in his chest like a stone dropped into still water. How narrow? Surgical. Whoever's doing it knows exactly what frequencies we're running. The words hung between them. Cole didn't let his face change. Operators read commanders the way sailors read weather, and if he showed alarm right now, he'd see it ripple through the entire team in 30 seconds. Can you work around it? Maybe. Give me 4 minutes. You have 2. And Varro. He caught the man's eyes. Keep it quiet. Varro moved back to his position. Cole turned to Hale, who had returned from the flanks with a face that told the story before he opened his mouth. South side has boot prints, Hale said. Recent, multiple sets, moving parallel to our route. Cole kept his voice flat. How many? At least 8 separate tread patterns, possibly more. They're tracking us. They were tracking us. Hale's correction was quiet and deliberate. Past tense. They already know where we are. For 3 seconds, Cole stood completely still and ran the math. 9 men on his side. At minimum 8 on one flank alone, likely more on the north side, and whatever was holding position above them on the ridgeline. The blocked communications. The total absence of ambient wildlife. The boot prints moving parallel, not toward which meant they weren't scouting. They were herding. They were being herded. All units, Cole said into the radio, no longer whispering. There was no point now. Eyes open, weapons free. We have company. Do not fire until I give the order, but be ready. Hale, get Tan on the north flank right now. Commander. The first shot came from the east ridge. It didn't hit anyone. It didn't have to. It was a signal, and every operator on the team knew it the moment they heard it. One clean crack from elevated terrain, not aimed at them, but placed. Like a period at the end of a sentence. Like someone announcing calmly and without urgency, we are ready when you are. Then the forest came alive. From 3 directions, simultaneously, muzzle flash erupted from the tree line. Not wild, not panicked, controlled, disciplined, aimed fire that forced every seal flat into cover before a single man had time to locate a target. Cole hit the ground behind a moss-covered boulder and felt the impact of rounds against the rock face vibrating through his shoulder. He pushed up, acquired a shape in the muzzle flash, fired twice, and dropped back down. Contact east, contact south, contact north. Tan's voice was sharp through the radio. I count at least 6 shooters on the north side, wait 8. 8 confirmed. South side is moving up, Webb called. They're trying to pinch us. Stay in cover, Cole shouted. Do not let them close the distance. Hale was already moving laterally, pulling 2 team members with him to reinforce the south position. Cole pushed up again and fired controlled pairs into the east ridge, suppressing without advancing, buying seconds. Every second was a decision. Every decision was survival math. The hostile fire didn't decrease. It increased methodically, like someone was adjusting the dial on pressure rather than simply pulling every trigger available. There was a rhythm to it. Fire from the north forcing heads down, then fire from the east forcing left movement, then fire from the south cutting off that left movement. They were being compressed. Cole had been in engagements that felt like chaos. This didn't feel like chaos. It felt like a sentence being written. And his team was the period at the end. Varro, where's my comms? He called. Still blocked, Commander. They're cycling the frequencies. Every time I find a gap, it closes. Keep trying. I am keeping trying. Anton Webb's voice cut in from the south position, and there was something in it Cole hadn't heard from Webb in 4 years of operations together, a note of genuine alarm. Commander, they're not pushing forward. They're just holding the line, all 3 sides. They're not trying to close. They're waiting, Hale said from somewhere to Cole's left. They want us to move to the ravine. Cole processed that in an instant. The terrain briefing. The ravine to the west, the only direction not currently receiving incoming fire. A natural channel maybe 40 feet deep, cutting northeast through the forest. If they moved to the ravine for cover, they would be entering a channel with no lateral exits. It was the only open direction, which meant it was the most dangerous direction. Nobody moves west, Cole ordered. We hold here. Commander, Webb said, and his voice had dropped very low. We can't hold here. We're pinned on 3 sides with no comms and no extraction window. If we don't move, the second shot came from the east ridge. This time it found its target, Petty Officer 3rd Class Danny Reyes, 24 years old. 2 tours the best poker face in the unit, caught the round in his upper right shoulder and went down hard, calling out once before he got his teeth together and went silent. He was professional about it. That almost made it worse. Man down, Tan's voice. Cole was already moving. He got to Reyes in 3 seconds, pulling him behind the boulder, getting his hand on the wound. Not fatal, not even close to fatal. The round had gone through clean and high. But Reyes was out of the fight, and the team had just lost 11% of its effective force in a single exchange. I'm okay, Reyes said through his teeth. He was not okay, but he wasn't wrong to say it either. It was the kind of thing you said because saying it kept you in the game mentally, and staying in the game was the difference. Stay down, Cole told him. Web tourniquet now. Already on it. Cole pulled back to his position and looked at the tactical picture with the clarity of a man who had just run out of comfortable options. 3 sides engaged, 1 side left open as a trap. 1 man wounded, communications dead, no extraction window, and an enemy force that was demonstrating the kind of coordinated precision that suggested they had trained specifically for this engagement. Not for an engagement like this. For this engagement. Hale, Cole said quietly. I know, Hale answered. He'd already reached the same conclusion. Someone gave them the playbook. The words dropped like a verdict. Cole didn't respond because there was nothing to say yet. Whoever had given the enemy their communication frequencies, their movement patterns, their infiltration window, that conversation was for later. Right now, there was only the immediate problem of 9 men, 8 effective, being held in place by a coordinated force that showed no interest in rushing the kill. They were patient. That was the most frightening thing. They were extraordinarily patient. Cole pressed himself against the boulder and listened to the controlled rhythm of the incoming fire, and he thought about what it meant to face an enemy that had time on their side. An enemy that didn't need to win quickly. An enemy that only needed to wait. Tan, he said, get me elevation options. Anything above the current tree line on our side that we could put a shooter on without crossing the open ground. Tan was quiet for a moment. Nothing good, Commander. There's a rock outcrop, maybe 60 meters northeast, but getting there means crossing 20 meters of open ground under fire from the east ridge. What about the west side of the ravine? I thought we weren't going to the ravine. We're not. I'm asking what's on the west side of it. Another pause. Nothing, just the ridge continuing north. Dead ground from here. Dead ground. Cole filed that away. Vero, anything on comms? I found a partial window on a secondary frequency, but it closes every 40 seconds. I can get a burst transmission out, maybe 60% chance it's received. No guarantee command can decode a partial. Prepare the burst. Position confirmation, hostile contact comms, interference 1 casualty. Send everything you can fit in 12 seconds. Copy. Cole looked across at Hale, who was managing the south position with the careful economy of a man spending resources he couldn't afford to waste. 2 shooters maintaining suppressive fire. Ammunition was not infinite. The math on that was simple and ugly. How long do we have? Hale called. Cole thought about it. He thought about the ammunition count, the rate of incoming fire, the wound situation, the blocked comms, the terrain, the patience of the enemy. He thought about all of it at once, the way you had to think about everything at once when there were no good options left. Not long enough, he said. And then from the north ridge, from a position none of them had identified, from a direction the enemy controlled, and Cole's team had no eyes on, a shot rang out that was different from every other shot they had heard that night, because nobody on Cole's team had fired it. And an enemy shooter who had been directing coordinated fire from an elevated position on the north tree line dropped without a sound. The fire from that position stopped. Completely. Instantly. Tan said very slowly, Commander, I didn't fire that. I know, Cole said. Nobody on our team fired that. I know. The north side fire had been the coordination point, the elevated shooter feeding targeting information across to the east and south positions. With that single shot, whoever had pulled the trigger had just broken the enemy's nervous system. The east and south positions kept firing, but now they were firing blind. The rhythm faltered. The compression paused. Cole felt the shift and didn't question it. He didn't have time to question it. He pressed his radio. All units, the north position just went silent. I don't know why, and I don't know how long it lasts. We move east toward the ridge in 30 seconds. Fast and low. Tan, your point. Hale, you cover Webb and Reyes. Vero, send that burst transmission, and then you move with me. Commander who? Move, Cole said. Questions later. Right now we move. Hale's voice came back immediately. Copy that. Moving in 30. Cole pressed his back against the boulder one last time and looked toward the north ridge where that single inexplicable shot had come from. He couldn't see anything. The fog had thickened in the last 20 minutes, and the pine canopy above caught what little moonlight reached the valley floor. There was nothing visible on the ridge. Nothing at all. But someone was up there. Someone who could put the round through the coordination link of an enemy force from a range Cole couldn't even estimate in fog at night using no muzzle suppressor because there had been no sound delay, which meant either a suppressor so advanced it left no acoustic signature or a level of distance that absorbed the report entirely. Cole filed it away and pushed off the boulder. Moving, he said, 30 seconds. Don't stop for anything. The team moved. And on the ridge above, unseen and undetected, something shifted in the darkness. It had been watching for 6 minutes before the first shot. It had taken the shot not because the plan required it, but because 9 men were about to die, and that outcome was not something he could watch and accept. He had been watching a lot of things for 3 years, but this he could not watch. The figure on the ridge said nothing moved, nothing except one hand pulling the bolt. With the quiet economy of a man who had done this so many times, it had become as natural as breathing and settled his eye back against the scope. The team below was moving. He would make sure they got where they needed to go. 14 hours. The team moved fast and they moved ugly. There was nothing graceful about it. 9 men, 8, effective pushing through dense pine and wet ground with live fire still coming from the east and south. Cole ran low and hard, keeping his shoulder below the natural sight line of the east ridge, feeling the rounds cutting the air somewhere above him with that particular sound that never got easier to hear no matter how many times you heard it. Like fabric tearing. Like the world deciding whether it wanted to keep you in it. Tan was on point and moving well, reading the ground ahead the way he always did, not thinking about it, just reading it the way a man reads the road while driving a route he knows by heart. Webb had Reyes by the good arm, moving him fast enough to keep him in the fight mentally, even though the blood soaking through the field dressing on his shoulders said clearly that Reyes was running on adrenaline and pride and not much else. Keep moving, Cole said into the radio, steady and flat. Don't bunch up. Spread it out. From the south, the incoming fire shifted slightly, not toward them sideways, like the shooters were repositioning rather than pursuing. Cole caught that and turned it over in his mind while he ran. An enemy that repositions laterally instead of advancing when the target moves, that was not an enemy trying to eliminate the target. That was an enemy trying to maintain containment. They still wanted the ravine. Tan hard right, Cole said, away from the ravine, northeast along the ridge base. That takes us uphill, Commander. I know. Under fire. I know, Tan. Move. There was a half-second pause. The kind a man allows himself when he disagrees with an order but is going to follow it anyway, and then Tan cut right hard, and the team followed. Cole felt the incline immediately, the ground pushing back against his legs, the footing becoming loose and uneven, where pine needles had accumulated over decades into a surface that wanted to slide under pressure. Hale materialized beside him without announcement. That was a thing Hale did appeared when Cole needed to think out loud to someone who would actually listen. Northeast takes us toward the ridge base, Hale said. If there's anyone up there, there's someone up there. Friendly or hostile? That shot killed their coordinator, Cole said. You tell me. Hale was quiet for 3 strides. Could be a third party. Could be another shot from the ridge. Not at the SEALs. From the ridge downward toward the south tree line. 1 round. Clean and quiet and impossibly precise. And then from the south position, one of the hostile shooters who had been maintaining suppressive fire simply stopped. Not pulling back, not repositioning. Stopped. Tan's voice on the radio. Commander, south position just lost a shooter. I see it. That's 2 shots from the ridge and 2 hostile operators down. Nobody on our team is responsible for either one. Correct. So what we're saying is, we're not saying anything right now, Cole cut him off. We're moving. Stay focused. But the information was reshaping the picture faster than Cole could keep pace with tactically. Whoever was on that ridge was not taking exploratory shots. They were not suppressing generally. They were selecting. Each round was targeted, deliberate, and placed with an accuracy that eliminated not just the individual, but the function that individual served. First the coordinator, now a key shooter on the south flank. Whoever was doing this understood the enemy's command structure well enough to dismantle it surgically in sequence from a distance that made detection nearly impossible. That was not a trained shooter doing their job. That was something else. Something Cole hadn't encountered in 11 years, 19 hours. Vero caught up with Cole on the slope and handed him the communications unit with the expression of a man delivering mixed news. Burst went out, Vero said. Son, Partial confirmation on the receive end, someone at command got enough to know we're in contact. But the response frequency is still jammed. They know we're in trouble. They don't know how much. Can they get eyes on us, aerial asset? Not for at least 40 minutes. Nearest drone coverage is repositioning from a coastal patrol. 40 minutes. Cole repeated it in his mind without inflection. And our ammunition status, Vero pulled a face. Tan is good. Webb is running low. He burned a lot covering the south during the initial contact. I'm at about 60%. The rest of the team is somewhere between those two. Reyes. His weapon's secure. He's not using it. Cole looked back over his shoulder at where Webb was still supporting Reyes up the slope. The wounded man had gone quiet in that way. That wasn't surrender, it was concentration. Every step was a decision to keep moving rather than stop. Cole had enormous respect for that kind of silence. How long can we sustain at current engagement rates, he asked. Varro did the math in his head, which he was very fast at. 20, maybe 25 minutes of active engagement before we're rationing. After that, we're looking at secondary options. Secondary options was how operators said things they didn't want to say plainly. Cole nodded and moved forward. The hostile fire had changed. Not stop changed. The East Ridge was still active, but the volume had dropped and the targeting had become less coordinated. Shots were coming in longer intervals, covering wider arcs, suggesting the shooters were no longer being directed toward specific positions. They were guessing. The south position had gone from disciplined covering fire to sporadic bursts that moved unpredictably, the signature of fighters who had lost their command signal and were operating on instinct. It was not the behavior of a defeated force. It was the behavior of a force that had lost its conductor mid-performance. The instruments were still there. They just didn't know the music anymore. And the man on the ridge was doing that, methodically, shot by shot, 24 hours. Hale found a natural rock shelf approximately 40 meters up the slope, not a defensive position by any professional standard, but better than open ground. He moved 3 team members into it and set up an improvised firing line facing east and south, while Cole pushed Tan another 10 meters up the slope to get eyes on the ridge. Tan, Cole said quietly through the radio, tell me what you see up there. 30 seconds of silence. Then nothing. Nothing confirmed. There's a section of the ridge that's darker than it should be given the ambient light and the fog pattern. Could be an outcrop. Could be a hide position. Could be my imagination. How far? Estimated 400 meters. Maybe 450. The elevation difference makes it hard. Cole processed that. 400 to 450 meters of elevation in fog at night with a target acquisition time measured in seconds between shots. The math on that was not comfortable. That was not SEAL school marksmanship. That was not even senior operator marksmanship. What he was describing was the top fraction of a fraction of a fraction of the trained shooter population. Tan, do not engage that position. A pause. Was not planning to, Commander. I mean it. Whatever is up there is not shooting at us. I don't want us to give it a reason to start. Understood. Another pause. Commander, can I ask a question? No. Right. From the rock shelf, Webb's voice came in low and careful. Commander, south up position is maneuvering. They're trying to flank around the base of the slope. If they get to the 9 o'clock position on us, they'll have an angle on this shelf. How long? 3 minutes, maybe 4 if the ground slows them. Cole was already moving before Webb finished the sentence. He got to the shelf, assessed the angle, and pulled 2 team members to shift their covering arc to the southwest. It bought time. Not much. The geometry of the position was increasingly unfavorable, and everyone on the team knew it without being told. Commander, Hale's voice very low, very close. Just for Cole. We need something to change. Cole met his eyes. I know. We needed to change in the next 4 minutes. I know Marcus. It was the first time he'd used Hale's given name on an operation in 3 years. Hale noticed it and said nothing because what was there to say? The facts were the facts. 9 men, 1 wounded, running low on ammunition, no extraction, no comms, no air support for 35 minutes, and an enemy force that was diminished but not broken, still maneuvering, still intelligent, still trying to complete the mission that someone had sent them here to complete. Something needed to change. 27 hours. The third shot from the ridge came while Cole was watching the south maneuver attempt, and he almost missed the significance of where it landed. Almost. The shot did not hit a shooter this time. It hit the radio operator that Cole had failed to identify in the hostile formation, a figure who had been moving parallel to the flanking team, maintaining communication between the south element and whatever command structure remained. Cole had not even seen the figure clearly enough to identify the role, but whoever was on the ridge had identified it, prioritized it, and eliminated it before the flanking move could be coordinated. The south element paused, not stopped, paused, the way a hand pauses when it reaches for something and finds it gone. Then the maneuvering began again, but slower, less confident, with the particular hesitation of soldiers who suddenly have to make decisions that used to be made for them. And Vero said it first. They just lost their radio man. I see it, Cole said. Commander, whoever is on that ridge is reading their chain of command better than we are. I see it, Vero. That means they're either working from prior intelligence on this force, or they've been watching this specific operation long enough to Vero. Sir, one thought at a time. Vero went quiet. Cole watched the south element's hesitation and felt the moment the tactical window was opening. It wasn't wide, it wasn't comfortable, but it was there, and windows didn't stay open in a firefight. You went through them or you didn't. All units, he said into the radio, and his voice carried the particular weight of a decision that had been made and would not be revisited. We're pushing east, on my mark. Tan, you move first, get to the secondary tree line, and hold. Webb, you're with Reyes, you move on Tan's signal. Hale, you anchor the west side until everyone else is through. On my mark. Copy, Tan said. Copy, Webb said. Copy, Hale said. And then, just barely, good call. Mark. Tan was already moving before Cole finished the word. He was fast, not reckless, fast, but that particular controlled velocity that comes from absolute physical confidence, married to tactical discipline. He crossed 20 meters of open ground in the time it takes most people to decide to start running, and he hit the secondary tree line and went flat and began covering back immediately. Clear, Tan said. Move. Webb moved with Reyes, and Cole felt his heart rate spike watching them cross because Reyes was moving slower now. The adrenaline wearing thin against blood loss and pain, and there were 3 seconds in the middle of that crossing where they were fully exposed, and Cole found himself doing something he hadn't done since his first deployment. He held his breath. They made it. Clear, Webb said, and there was relief compressed into that one word like pressure in a sealed container. The rest of the team moved in pairs, disciplined covering intervals, while Hale maintained rear security with a controlled aggression that was almost beautiful to watch if you were in a position to appreciate beauty. Cole moved last, the way commanders moved last, because that was the only honest answer to the question of what leadership actually meant when it stopped being theoretical. He was 5 meters into the open ground when the East Ridge found him. The round hit the soil 2 feet to his left and threw up a spray of earth that caught him across the left cheek and jaw. He didn't stop. Stopping was death. He pushed harder, running the last 15 meters on pure will, and hit the tree line and went down behind the first substantial cover he reached. For exactly 2 seconds he lay there and breathed. Just breathed. Then he was back up. Status, he said into the radio. Everyone checked in, all present, all moving. Cole exhaled once and allowed himself precisely that one breath of something that was not quite relief, because relief was for when it was over, and this was not over. Not close. 33 hours. The fourth shot from the ridge came 11 minutes after the third, and by that point, Cole had repositioned the team into a tighter defensive cluster in the secondary tree line with better angles east and a marginally improved situation overall. The 11 minutes had been ugly sporadic contact ammunition management, Reyes needing a second look at the wound, Vero attempting to reopen the communications window, but ugly and alive was significantly better than the alternative. The fourth shot hit the elevated sniper position that had been holding on the East Ridge and making life difficult since the opening exchange. The one that Cole's team had tried and failed to suppress 3 separate times. The one that had wounded Reyes. The one that had been operating with what felt like perfect visibility and zero concern about return fire. One shot from 450 meters at elevation in fog, and the East Ridge went quiet. The silence that followed was almost physical, like a door closing. The entire hostile force felt it. You could tell by the way the remaining fire patterns changed, became erratic, became individual rather than collective. Without the East Ridge providing covering fire and depth, without the South coordinator, without the radio man, the remaining hostile operators were no longer an organized force. They were a collection of armed individuals in the dark, and that was a very different problem. Commander Bataan said, and his voice had changed, not frightened, recalibrated. The East Ridge is silent. I know. That sniper was the best shooter they had. He was operating at what I'd estimate was 350 meters minimum. Whoever just dropped him was operating from significantly further, above and behind his position. I know, Tan. Commander, it means someone up on that ridge just saved your life, and mine, and everyone else in this unit, Cole said quietly. Let's make sure that means something. What is your ammunition count? Tan took a breath. I'm okay. Better than okay. If the East Ridge is clear, we can work with what we have. Then we work. 22, 41 hours twist. It was Hale who found it. He'd been methodical about checking the surrounding terrain. Even during the engagement, the habit of a man who believes that the thing that kills you is usually the thing you stop paying attention to, and he was working a slow visual sweep of the secondary tree line when his light caught something that didn't belong. It was small, easy to miss in the dark, easy to dismiss as debris. But Hale looked at it for 3 seconds and then called Cole over with a tone that had no alarm in it, and somehow that was more alarming than if it had. Cole moved to his position and looked where Hale was looking, a cellular signal repeater. Consumer-grade modified attached low on a pine trunk with zip ties and a water-resistant casing. Active. Broadcasting. Cole felt it move through him in a way that had nothing to do with the cold. That's not theirs, he said. No, Hale agreed. It's older than their operation. The adhesive on the casing has weathered. This has been here weeks. Someone placed it to ensure signal coverage in this specific area. Yes. Before tonight. Weeks before tonight. Hale's voice was careful and precise. Commander, someone anticipated this engagement. Not this kind of engagement. This engagement in this location. Cole stared at the device. In 11 years, he had seen a lot of things that changed his understanding of a situation. This was one of them. This was someone who had known that this specific corridor would be the site of a military engagement significant enough to warrant communication support, and had positioned that support before anyone in his chain of command had even approved the mission. Don't touch it, Cole said. I wasn't going to. And don't mention it on the radio. Hale's eyes moved to his. You think we have a listener? It wasn't a question. Cole didn't answer it like one. He just held Hale's gaze for a moment and then looked back at the device. The hostile force had known their frequencies, had known their movement patterns, had known their infiltration window, and someone had placed a signal repeater here weeks ago before the mission existed on paper in a location that would guarantee communications coverage for anyone who needed it. Not the hostile force. The repeater was broadcasting on a frequency Cole recognized from an entirely different context, a context that was classified at a level above his current mission brief. He recognized it the way you recognize a face that belongs in a completely different room than the one you're standing in, with the particular cognitive dissonance of something that should not be here, but undeniably is. He filed it away hard and deep and behind a door he was not going to open in the middle of an active engagement. Later. Everything later. We move in 5 minutes, he told Hale. Get the team ready. 49 hours. The remaining hostile fire had become genuinely sporadic by the time Cole got the team moving again. Individual shots at uncertain intervals from positions that were no longer coordinated with each other. The pattern of a force that had lost command cohesion and was now operating on fear rather than plan. Still dangerous. Never underestimate a frightened man with a weapon, but manageable in a way that the previous hour had not been. Cole pushed the team northeast, staying below the ridgeline, moving with purpose rather than desperation. Reyes was struggling, but present, Webb had fashioned a better field dressing from his own kit, and the blood loss had slowed enough that Cole was prepared to believe Reyes would make it to extraction if they could get an extraction window open. Varro was still working the communications equipment with the focused intensity of a man for whom giving up simply was not a registered option. Every 40 seconds, he tried a new frequency range. Every 40 seconds, the block held. But it was holding less cleanly now, fraying at the edges, which meant either the jamming equipment was being degraded or it was being degraded manually. By someone. Getting cleaner, Varro said almost to himself. How clean? Another 10 minutes, maybe I can push a full transmission through. Maybe. Keep working. Another shot from the ridge. This one did not eliminate a shooter. It hit the ground 5 meters in front of a hostile position that had been set up at the base of a drainage channel, a position that, if allowed to complete its setup, would have had an angle on the team's current movement path. The shot did not kill anyone. It was a warning, or rather, it was a redirection, a shot placed with enough precision and deliberateness to say not that way. Cole watched the hostile position scramble backward and thought about what that meant. A sniper who was not just neutralizing threats, but actively managing the battlefield, shaping movement, hurting but not the way the enemy had tried to hurt his team. This was different. This was someone moving chess pieces with a purpose Cole could not yet see but had begun to trust. Because whoever was on that ridge was very, very good. And very, very good people in Cole's experience did not operate without purpose. "Commander," Tan's voice low and quick. "Movement on the north side, but it's different. It's not hostile movement. It's someone coming down the ridge." Cole stopped. "Say again." "Single figure, moving down from the upper ridge, moving slow, deliberate, no threat posture." Cole felt the team tighten around him, not in panic, but in the particular alertness of people who have been in a fight and are suddenly presented with a variable that doesn't fit the equation they've been solving. "Challenge them," Cole said. "Commander of the range." "Challenge them, Tan. Standard protocol." A pause, then Tan's voice, louder now, carrying across the dark slope. "Identify yourself, call sign and unit." Silence. Then from the darkness of the upper slope, a voice came back. Not loud, not hurried. Calm in the way that some voices are calm, not because there is nothing to fear, but because the person has already been through everything there is to fear and reached the other side. "No call sign," the voice said. "No unit." Cole moved up beside Tannen, looked toward the sound. He could see a shape on the slope, a figure standing still, making no threatening movement, holding no visible weapon in an aggressive posture. Just standing, just breathing. "Identify yourself," Cole said, his own voice carrying this time. Another pause. Longer, like the figure was deciding how much to give. "Someone who was in the neighborhood," the voice said, "and didn't like the odds." Cole stared at the shape on the slope for a long moment. He felt Hale move up on his right side. He heard Vero go very still behind him. He heard Reyes, from where Webb was holding him upright against a tree, say quietly and with absolute conviction, "That's not one of ours." "No," Cole said. "He's not." He took one step forward and then another, and the figure on the slope did not move back, did not raise a weapon, did not do anything except stand there in the dark and wait with the patience of someone who had been waiting for a very long time. Cole stopped 10 feet from the figure and looked at him directly. He couldn't see the face clearly. He didn't need to. The rifle on the man's back told him enough. The way the man held himself told him enough. The particular stillness of someone who had spent so much time motionless, that movement itself became a choice rather than a default. "How many were there?" Cole asked. It wasn't the question he'd planned to ask, but it came out. The figure considered it. 14, 11 confirmed down or out, 3 withdrew north approximately 9 minutes ago. "You're clear for the time being." Cole let that settle. 14. And his team of 9 had been facing them without knowing the count. Without knowing they'd been surrounded on that scale. He felt something cold move through him that was not fear. It was the retrospective awareness of how close it had been, how very, very close. "Who are you?" Cole asked. The figure looked at him. And for a moment, just a moment, something moved across the face that Cole could almost see in the dark. Not quite an emotion, more like the ghost of one. The memory of something that used to be simpler. "Call me Ward," the man said. And that was all, 22:51 hours. Cole stood 10 feet from the man who called himself Ward and did what commanders do when they encounter something they cannot immediately classify, he observed. He let the silence hold for a few seconds longer than was comfortable, because discomfort had a way of producing information, and right now Cole needed every piece of information he could get from this encounter before he decided what it meant. Ward did not fill the silence. That told Cole something. Most people, when silence pressed on them, talked. They explained, justified, deflected, performed. Ward simply stood there on the slope and waited with the particular ease of a man who had learned long ago that silence was not a problem to be solved. It was a condition to be occupied, Shud. "Ward," Cole said. First name or last? Last. Unit? None, currently. Currently. Cole let that word sit by itself, which implies previously. Ward's expression shifted by a fraction that most people would have missed entirely. Most things that are true imply a previously. Hale stepped up beside Cole. He had his weapon at low ready, not threatening, not holstered. The middle position that said, I am paying close attention and I have not decided yet. Commander, Hale said quietly, we need to keep moving. We will. Cole kept his eyes on Ward. You said 11 confirmed down or out. 3 withdrew north. You tracked the full hostile force count before the engagement started. Yes. How long were you watching before you fired the first shot? Ward considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. Long enough. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have that doesn't require a conversation we don't have time for right now. Ward looked past Cole toward where Webb was supporting Reyes against the tree. Your man needs a hospital, not a field dressing. A hospital. The round passed clean, but it nicked the clavicle, and the fracture is going to cause complications if he puts any more weight on that arm. Cole turned slightly and looked at Reyes, then back at Ward. You can tell that from here. I could tell it from the ridge. No arrogance in it, just information. He's compensating his gait left to reduce pressure on the shoulder. That means the pain spike is coming from the bone, not the soft tissue. Clean through the soft tissue doesn't do that. The team had gone very quiet, not tense quiet in the way that people go quiet when they realize they are in the presence of something that doesn't operate by the rules they're used to. Vero had stopped fiddling with the communications equipment. Tan had lowered his weapon slightly, which was not a conscious decision. It was the physical response of an operator who no longer registered the figure in front of him as a threat. Cole registered all of it and made his decision the way he made most decisions, fast, clean, and without the luxury of certainty. You're coming with us, he said, at least until we reach the extraction window. Ward looked at him for a moment. That was not a question. No, it wasn't. Another pause. Ward looked at the slope behind him, then back at Cole with the expression of a man running private calculation. Then he said quietly, northeast. There's a secondary fire road that the militia has been using for vehicle access. If we can reach it before the 3 who withdrew north loop around you, have a clean path to the coastal highway. How far? 1,100 meters, mostly uphill, in the dark, with a wounded man. Yes. Ward said it without apology because it was simply the truth. But the alternative is waiting for air support in a position the remaining hostile element already has mapped. That seems worse. Cole looked at Hale. Hale gave the smallest possible nod that still counted as a nod. Cole looked back at Ward. Lead the way, 22:57 hours. Ward moved differently from anyone else on the slope. It was not dramatic. It was not the movie version of a special operator moving through dark terrain. It was quieter than that, more economical. He moved like a man who had spent so much time in difficult terrain that the difficulty had simply stopped registering as difficulty. He picked lines through the undergrowth that the SEALs would not have chosen, and that turned out every time to be marginally faster and significantly quieter than the alternatives. Cole watched him and kept filing things away. The rifle on Ward's back was not standard issue, anything. It was a precision, long-range platform, bolt action with a suppressor system that Cole had seen exactly once before in his career at a classified demonstration 3 years earlier. The kind of equipment that did not come from a sporting goods store. The kind that came from a very specific supply chain that very few people had access to. Tan pulled up beside Cole as they climbed and spoke just above a breath. Commander, the rifle he's carrying. I see it. That's not a civilian weapon. No. And the suppressor? Tan. Sir? File it. Tan filed it. He was good at that. Less good than Hale at doing it without the expression that said he was filing it, but good enough. They moved in a loose column, Ward at the front, Cole second, Hale managing the team behind. Reyes was doing better in motion than he had been. Stationary movement had a way of keeping the body committed to continuing, whereas stopping invited the systems to start acknowledging how badly they wanted to shut down. Webb stayed close, one hand on Reyes's good side, not gripping, just present. Ready? At the 7-minute mark, Ward stopped without warning or signal, and the entire team froze on his cue with the automatic response of people who had been in enough situations to understand that when someone who just eliminated 11 hostile operators stops walking, You stop walking. Ward stood motionless for 4 seconds. Then he turned his head slightly toward Cole and said, barely moving his lips, 12 o'clock, 60 meters, not moving, holding position. Cole raised his optics and swept slowly. He saw them. Two figures positioned at the top of a natural rise, holding what looked like a stationary overwatch. Not moving, waiting. They're covering the fire road, Hale breathed from just behind Cole's left shoulder. Which means someone told them we'd try for the fire road, Cole said. Or they're guessing. They're not guessing. Cole lowered the optics and looked at Ward. You said the fire road was our best option. It is, Ward said, which means they know it's your best option. Someone on their side reads terrain the same way I do. Rook, Cole said. Ward's expression did not change, but something behind it did. Something shifted deep and quick, like a current moving beneath still water. You've encountered that name. It came up in the pre-mission intelligence, unidentified operative, tactical coordinator for this network. Cole watched Ward's face carefully. You recognize it. Ward was quiet for 2 full seconds. I know the methodology. I know how Rook thinks. I've been tracking the network for a while. How long? Long enough that those 2 men on the rise are a problem I know how to solve, Ward said. Give me 4 minutes and hold your team here. Cole's instinct was to refuse. Every protocol he'd ever been trained on said that you do not send an unverified individual, a man with no identified unit, no call sign, no established chain of accountability, to conduct a solo operation while your team holds position. Every protocol said that. He let Ward go anyway, because every protocol had also been written before tonight, and Ward had already demonstrated 11 times over that his judgment was operating at a level Cole's protocols had not been designed to accommodate. 23:0 or 4 hours. The 4 minutes felt long in the way that 4 minutes feels long when you are holding 8 men in position on a dark hillside and a stranger has walked into the dark ahead of you to handle something you cannot handle yourself. Cole kept his breathing regular and his focus divided between the rise ahead and the team behind him cycling attention the way you had to cycle it when there were too many things to watch at once. Reyes had sat down against a rock, which was fine. He was conscious, alert, and making no noise about the pain, which meant he was managing it. Varro had not stopped working the communications unit. It had become a kind of meditation at this point, methodical, persistent, the work of a man who does not accept fixed limits as permanent features of reality. At 3 minutes and 40 seconds by Cole's count, 2 things happened in very close succession. First, the 2 figures on the rise simply disappeared, not in any dramatic fashion, just there and then, not there the way shapes sometimes resolve into absence in the dark. Second, Varro inhaled sharply through his teeth. Commander, Varro said, I have a partial window. Narrow, maybe 20 seconds. Send it. Send everything now, Varro transmitted. It was not a clean transmission. The block had thinned rather than opened, and Cole could hear the compression in Varro's voice as he pushed the status report through position, update hostile force engaged, and largely neutralize 1 casualty current, heading fire road approach. 12 seconds of information delivered in the cadence of a man trying to fit a paragraph into a sentence. Then the window closed again, and Varro sat back and exhaled. Confirmation, Cole asked. Partial. Someone got enough to acknowledge. No response content, just the acknowledgement code. That's enough. It meant command knew they were alive and moving. It meant in 25 to 30 minutes there would be an asset somewhere in the area looking for them. And it wasn't rescue, it was a thread. But threads were what you followed when that was all there was. Ward came back from the dark at exactly 4 minutes. He appeared from a slightly different angle than he'd left, which meant he'd circled on his approach, which meant he'd been thinking about sightlines on the way back as well as on the way there. He stopped in front of Cole without ceremony. Clear, he said. Fire road is accessible. Cole looked at him for a moment. How redirected, Ward said. Cole understood that redirected was not the same as eliminated, and that Ward had chosen that word deliberately. He decided not to press it. Move at 23 is 11 hours, major twist. They reached the fire road in 9 minutes of hard climbing, and Cole was in the process of distributing the team along the road's edge in preparation for movement toward the coastal highway when Varro stopped dead and said very quietly, Commander, come look at this. Cole moved to Varro's position. Varro was looking at the communications unit, not the transmission screen, but the frequency analysis display, which was a secondary function most operators never used because it required a level of signals intelligence background that was outside the standard operator toolkit. The jamming frequency, Vero said, it's been consistent all night, same narrow band, same cycling pattern. But look at this. He pointed to a secondary signal that had appeared on the analysis display in the last 30 seconds. This isn't the jammer. This is riding under it. Someone is broadcasting on a ghost frequency tucked inside the jamming band. Cole looked at the display. He wasn't a signals intelligence specialist, but he understood what he was seeing well enough. Someone was using the hostile force's own communications jamming as cover for a secondary broadcast, hiding a signal inside the interference, the way you might hide a whisper inside a shout. What? Can you decode it? Not without the encryption key, but I can see its structure. Commander, this signal is not coming from the hostile positions. Vero's voice dropped further. It's coming from behind us, from the direction of the secondary tree line where we repositioned 40 minutes ago, the place where Hale had found the cellular repeater. Cole straightened slowly. He turned and found Hale 3 meters away, who had heard everything, and whose expression was the controlled version of an expression that wanted to be considerably less controlled. Then Cole turned further and found Ward standing 5 feet behind him, looking at the communications display, with an expression that was not surprise, not the smallest fraction of surprise. You knew about the ghost signal, Cole said. It was not a question. Ward met his eyes. Yes. You placed the repeater. A pause. 1 beat. Yes. Cole felt the information move through the team like electricity through water. He heard Tan make a sound that was not quite a word. He heard Webb say under his breath something short and direct that accurately captured the emotional content of the moment. You've been monitoring this quarter, Cole said. His voice was flat and careful. The voice of a man constructing a sentence, very precisely because the sentence mattered. Before tonight, weeks before tonight, you positioned its communications infrastructure here. You knew an engagement was coming in this specific location. I knew the network was planning an operation, Ward said. I did not know it would target your unit specifically. I did not know tonight was the night until I saw your team's infiltration pattern approximately 90 minutes before the contact began. And you watched, Cole said, for 90 minutes. I was assessing. You were deciding. Ward held his gaze. Yes, I was deciding. The word landed with weight, not defensiveness, not apology, just the honest acknowledgement of a man who had possessed the power to intervene and had taken his time about deploying it. Cole held that for 3 seconds. 3 seconds was what he could afford to be angry. Then he let it go, because anger was a resource and resources were finite, and the night was not finished. What else do you know about this network? Cole asked. More than is appropriate to share on a hillside in the dark with 3 hostile operators unaccounted for. Give me the version that fits the hillside. Ward looked at him steadily. The network has domestic infrastructure, not just transit routes. Placement. People inside institutional frameworks who have been managing information flow about operations that interfere with the trafficking corridor. That's how they had your frequency. That's how they had your movement pattern. That's how they knew you were coming before you arrived. Cole felt it land. The intelligence leak was not a gap. It was a placement. Someone with access to mission planning pote had fed it to the network, which meant someone in his chain of command, not necessarily directly, possibly through layers, but somewhere in the architecture of the mission's authorization, had served his team up on a plate tonight. 9 men in a forest with blocked comms and 14 armed opponents who knew exactly where they would be. That was not an ambush. That was an assassination. Hale said nothing. He didn't need to. Cole could see in his face that Hale had arrived at the same place by the same road. The signal on that ghost frequency, Cole said to Vero, is it still active? Yes, sir, said Pomwajao. Someone is monitoring the outcome of tonight, through the repeater. Cole looked at Ward. If the ghost signal is reporting back to someone that someone knows this operation failed, they know the target force survived. Yes, Ward said, which means they'll want confirmation. And when they don't get it, they'll send something else. Ward said, not tonight. Tonight is over for them, but there will be a next step. There is always a next step with this network. Cole looked at the fire road ahead of them, the path north toward the coastal highway, toward extraction, toward the end of this night. He looked at his team. Reyes, pale and steady, not complaining about pain he absolutely had. Webb, one hand still close to Reyes without being attached to him, the quiet maintenance of a man who had not stopped caring. Tan alert and watching the perimeter, the way good operators always watch the perimeter, even when the immediate threat had passed, because immediate was a temporary category. Varro looking at Cole with the expression of a man waiting to be told what the facts meant. Hale, whose jaw was tight and whose eyes were already 3 steps ahead. "We move," Cole said. "Ward, you're still on point. Hale, rear security. Nobody talks about what was said here until we're through the extraction window. Not on any radio, not on any frequency." Clear, a chorus of quiet affirmatives. Cole turned back to Ward, who had already turned toward the fire road. "Ward," he stopped. "The 3 who withdrew north," Cole said. "You said unaccounted for." "Yes." "Are they a threat to our extraction route?" Ward turned back. He looked at Cole with an expression that was direct and specific and undecorated. "One of them is Rook." The name dropped into the team like a stone into still water. Cole felt the surface tension of the moment. "You're certain," Cole said. "I tracked his movement pattern from the ridge from the moment the engagement began. The way he moves, the way he positions his subordinates, the choice sequencing when the force began to lose cohesion." Ward paused. "I've been studying how Rook operates for 2 years. I know his signature the way you know a voice. And he's north of us. Currently, moving. He'll be calculating whether to complete the mission objective or withdraw and regroup." Ward's voice was calm and precise. "Rook does not abandon objectives easily. He is persistent." "So we have a deadline," Hale said from behind Cole. "Not a question." "You had a deadline," Ward said. "Since the moment you entered this forest, the difference now is that you know it." Cole looked at the fire road. 1,100 meters to the coastal highway. A wounded man, a team running on reduced ammunition and no confirmed extraction asset yet. 3 unaccounted hostile operators, one of whom was the architect of the ambush that had almost killed all of them. A ghost signal running through a communications repeater that someone somewhere was monitoring right now. And a man named Ward who should not exist standing on a fire road in coastal Oregon, having just saved 9 lives with a rifle he shouldn't have and intelligence he shouldn't have gathered in a presence that nobody had authorized. Cole thought about all of it and made the decision that his situation required. "Double pace," he said. "We move now." 23:19 hours. They were 400 meters up the fire road when Reyes went down. Not from a wound from his body, simply reaching the limit of what adrenaline and will could sustain and deciding without consultation to take a knee. Webb caught him before he hit the ground, which said everything about how closely Webb had been watching, and Cole was there in 4 seconds with his hand on Reyes' neck checking pulse. Strong, steady. Reyes looked up at Cole with the particular expression of a man furious at his own body for creating a logistical problem. "I'm fine," Reyes said. "You went down," Cole said. "I tripped." "Danny." "I'm fine." Reyes' jaw was tight. "Give me 10 seconds and I'm moving." Cole looked at him, not the wound, not the field dressing, but him. The eyes, the color of his face under the ambient light, the steadiness of his hands. 10 years of evaluating men in the field had given Cole a reasonably accurate internal instrument for the difference between a man who was fine and a man who was saying he was fine. Reyes was on the line between them. 8 seconds, Cole said. "Then you're up." "I only need 6. He was up in 7. Cole let him have the half-second of dignity. Ward had not stopped during the exchange. He had moved 5 meters up the road and established a quiet overwatch position facing north. And Cole noticed, as he noticed most things, that Ward had positioned himself at the specific angle that provided the maximum sight line toward the direction from which Rook was most likely to approach. He wasn't resting. He was watching. Cole moved up beside him. "How much further to a defensible position if we need one?" 200 meters. There's a culvert crossing that narrows the approach." Ward's eyes did not leave the north. "But I'd rather we don't need it." "Agreed." Cole looked north as well. The dark pressed back at him, uniform and unreadable. "How long have you been out here?" "Not tonight. Before tonight." Ward's pause this time was longer. Not reluctant, more like a man sorting through the question to find the accurate answer. 31 months, he said. Cole let that number breathe. Since the classified mission. Ward looked at him sideways, just briefly. You know about that. I know there's a record with your name that ends 31 months ago. Cole kept his voice neutral. The kind of record that ends in a way that doesn't usually include the person being alive to have a conversation about it. Ward said nothing. That's not an accusation, Cole said. That's an observation. I know the difference, Ward said. And then after a moment, the mission ended. I didn't come home. Those are two different things. Cole looked at him. The fire road stretched north into the dark ahead. Somewhere up there, 3 men were moving, and one of them was Rook, and Rook had spent tonight trying to kill 9 American service members in a forest they had no business dying in. And beside Cole stood a man who had spent 31 months alone in the machinery of something that ran deeper and darker than any mission briefing Cole had ever read, who had placed communications infrastructure in a forest weeks before an ambush he had anticipated, who had watched his team for 90 minutes before deciding to act, who had eliminated 11 armed opponents from a ridge in fog and darkness with a precision that defied what Cole thought he knew about the limits of human capability. He was not sure what Ward was. He was completely sure he was grateful Ward existed. We'll talk, Cole said, when this is over. People always say that, Ward answered quietly. I mean it. Ward looked at him for a moment. Something crossed his face that Cole couldn't name, not quite a smile, not quite sadness, somewhere in the geography between the two. We'll see, he said. And then his eyes went sharp and still and focused north, and Cole felt the shift in him, the way you feel a change in air pressure before a storm, and Cole raised his own weapon and looked north into the dark. Something was moving. Cole saw it a half-second after Ward did, which was still faster than anyone else on the team, and that half-second gap told him everything he needed to know about the difference between a very good operator and whatever Ward was. Movement. North. Not random deliberate. The particular quality of motion that belongs to someone who knows exactly where they are going and has decided the time for patience is finished. Ward's hand came up flat and low. The team stopped. Not a sound. Not a shifted foot. 9 men going completely still on a fire road in the dark because one man's hand said stop, and they had all by this point decided without formal discussion that Ward's instincts had earned unconditional credit. Ward did not reach for his rifle. He kept his hand up and his eyes forward, and he counted something in his head. Cole could see it in the slight movement of his lips, barely there. The private arithmetic of a man calibrating distance and speed and intention simultaneously. Then he turned his head a fraction toward Cole and said, barely a breath, 2, not 3. The third position is unaccounted for. Cole processed that. Rook had split his remaining element. 2 men approaching from the north visible, or at least detectable, and one unknown. Somewhere, which meant the 2 approaching were not the threat. The 2 approaching were the distraction. Hail, Sio, Cole said the same breath level as Ward. Watch R6, hard. Hale was already turning. Ward lowered his hand and looked at Cole with an expression that said, you got there. They know we're on the fire road, Ward said. The approach from the north is meant to push us back south, back toward the remaining hostile positions. And the third man goes wide and finds the angle. Yes, Rook. I would guess Rook personally. He won't trust this shot to someone else. Ward's voice was perfectly level, the way someone's voice is level when they have rehearsed a scenario so many times in their head that the actual occurrence feels like a review rather than an event. He is particular about finishing things himself. Cole looked at his team. The arithmetic was not comfortable. 2 hostiles approaching from the front, one unaccounted for with a likely flanking route, a wounded man who could not run, and a road that offered essentially 0 lateral cover once the engagement started. The culvert crossing Ward had mentioned was 180 meters ahead, barely 2 minutes at current pace. Barely. We move for the culvert, Cole said. Now, fast and quiet. If Rook is already in position, then we'll know when he fires, Cole said. Move. They moved, not running that kind of controlled hard walk that operators use when running is too loud, but standing still is too slow, the pace that eats distance without surrendering silence. Ward fell back from point to the middle of the formation, which Cole noticed and understood Ward was positioning himself where he could respond to contact from any direction. Not leading, protecting. Reyes was managing. Cole checked him at the 5-second mark and the 15-second mark, and both times Reyes met his eyes and gave nothing away. Webb was right there. Always right there. 90 meters to the culvert. 80, 70. From the north, the two approaching figures had stopped moving. That was worse than them continuing. A moving threat had a vector. A stopped threat had options. They're holding, Tan said, barely audible. I see it, Ward said. Why would they stop? Ward said nothing for 3 steps. Then, because they've been told to. Cole felt the implication of that and accelerated the pace. Rook had control of his remaining element even now, even after the catastrophic loss of the larger force, even in the dark on unfamiliar ground. The two men had stopped on command, which meant Rook had eyes on the team's position well enough to time his supporting element's movement, which meant Rook was closer than Cole wanted him to be. 50 meters to the culvert, 23, 26 hours. The shot came from the east, not from the north where the two figures were holding, not from any direction Cole had weighted heavily in his threat assessment. From the east, which was supposedly clear, which they had moved through 20 minutes ago, which should have been behind them and no longer relevant. It was not a hit. It was close, very close. The kind of close where the air displacement is a physical sensation, and it hit the fire road surface and threw up a chip of compacted gravel that caught Tan across the left forearm and made him hiss and grab the arm by instinct. Contact east, Tan said, already dropping. The team went to the road surface immediately, every man finding the flattest position the ground offered, which was not flat enough for anyone's comfort. Cole pressed his cheek to the road and ran the geometry. Shot from the east. Steep angle slightly downward, meaning elevation. Meaning Rook had gone wide, gained high ground, and now had a diagonal firing line across the road that covered the culvert approach. The culvert was no longer a destination. It was a kill zone. Wardy, Cole said, flat on the road. I know, Ward said. He was 3 feet to Cole's left, also flat, and he had his rifle in his hands with the scope up and his eye moving along the eastern high ground with the focused attention of a man who has done this before and knows what he's looking for. Can you locate him? Working. From the north, the two holding figures began moving again. Forward, not fast measured. They were applying pressure now that Rook had the high ground angle. Classic compression. Force the target into the kill zone or force them to break cover in a direction that exposes them to the elevated shooter. Cole had used this exact tactic himself on 3 separate operations. Knowing what it was did not make it easier to be inside it. Tan status, Cole said. Arms fine, Commander. Flesh across the forearm. I'm good. Webb, Reyes. Here, Webb said. Reyes is down and staying down. Smart man, Reyes said from somewhere behind Cole, his voice tighter than before, but still his. The north figures were 60 meters out and closing. Cole could see them now, 2 shapes disciplined, spacing using the road's edge for cover as they moved. Not rushing. They didn't need to rush. Rook had the angle. All they needed to do was close distance while their commander held the high ground. Ward, Cole said again, and this time there was an edge in it. Not panic urgency, the specific urgency of a man watching a noose tighten by degrees. He's moving, Ward said. East Ridge. He positioned between 2 fire road markers. I can see the negative space in his pattern. He fires and repositions. Short intervals. Can you take him, A pause that was shorter than it felt. The angle is difficult. He's using micro-terrain intelligently. Every time he fires, he's behind cover before the sound reaches us. That's a no. That's a not yet. Ward's voice did not change. Give me 60 seconds. The north element is 60 meters out. I know. That's not 60 seconds worth of problem, Ward. Handle the north element, Ward said. I'll handle Rook. Cole made the call the way he made all calls when the options were bad, and worse, he took bad. Hail, Tan, north element, suppressive fire, do not advance, keep them from closing distance. Everyone else hold position. Hail and Tan opened up on the north element simultaneously, and with the kind of disciplined precision that comes from years of training and genuine anger at being shot at in a forest in the middle of the night. The 2 approaching figures dove for cover, and the forward momentum stopped. Not eliminated, stopped. Bought time, which was what Cole had asked for. Ward was absolutely still beside him. Still in a way that Cole had never seen a human being be still. Not frozen occupied. Every available processing capacity committed to something internal and invisible, which was Cole understood the act of solving an extremely complex physics problem in real time using only the human nervous system as a calculator. The second shot from the east came at the 40-second mark. Again, not a hit, but this time Cole was watching for the muzzle signature, and he caught the barest ghost of it. High east, behind a natural rock formation, there and gone in less time than a blink. Ward fired. 1 round. Silence from the east. Cole waited 3 full seconds for a follow-up shot from Rook's position. Nothing came. The east ridge was quiet, not the tactical quiet of a man repositioning, the absolute quiet of an ended thing. Ward, Cole said. He moved right when I predicted, Ward said, and his voice was not quite shaken, but something in it had shifted. Something that had been braced and now did not need to be. His pattern was consistent enough. 3rd cycle. He's down. Ward did not answer for 2 seconds, and in those 2 seconds, Cole heard something that changed the structure of the moment entirely. From the east ridge, a voice, not calling for help, not screaming, controlled, clear, and deeply, genuinely angry. Ward. The name, just as the name, carried from the east ridge across the dark with enough precision to reach the fire road. Whoever was on that ridge was not dead, was not incapacitated, had shifted position fast enough to avoid the round, and now wanted the man who fired it to know it. Ward had gone very still in an entirely different way. He knew your name, Cole said. Ward said nothing. Rook knows your name. Yes, Ward said. 23:34 hours. Major twist. Cole turned his head and looked at Ward directly, and in the ambient light, he could see something in Ward's face that he had not seen there before. Not fear. Something older than fear. The expression of a man confronting a history he has spent 31 months outrunning and finding it tonight patient enough to have waited. How does he know your name? Cole said. Ward's jaw worked once, then because we worked together. The words fell into the space between them, and Cole let them lie there for a moment, turning them over, checking the underside. Work together, Cole said. In what context? The same network, Ward said. Before I understood what it was. His voice was flat and precise, each word placed deliberately. I was recruited as a contractor. Freelance precision work. Target removal in 3 countries over 18 months. I was told it was sanctioned. I was told the targets were validated. I was shown paperwork that looked legitimate because someone had spent significant resources making it look legitimate. Hale from 5 feet away spoke very quietly. When did you find out it wasn't? Ward looked toward Hale's voice. Mission in the Middle East, 31 months ago. The target was not what I'd been told. I walked away from the shot, and then I understood the full scope of what I had been part of, and I understood that walking away from one shot did not address the architecture that would simply send someone else. He paused. So I didn't come home. I stayed. I traced the network back from the inside. I identified the domestic infrastructure. I gathered what I needed to gather. And Rook, Cole said. Rook was my handler, Ward said, for 14 months. The information hit the team like a physical event. Cole heard Tan exhale through his nose. He heard Vero stop moving entirely. He heard from somewhere behind him Reyes say something very quiet and very specific that was almost certainly not appropriate, but was absolutely earned. Your handler, Cole said. He recruited me. He managed my assignments. He was the interface between me and whoever was at the top of the structure. Ward's voice remained flat. It was the flatness of a man who has told himself this story so many times that the telling of it has become separated from the feeling of it, a clinical distance maintained by will. When I walked away from the Middle East mission, he would have understood immediately what that meant. I was the only contractor in the network who knew enough to trace it back on. Eliminating me was not a preference. It was a necessity. That's Papa. So when you say you've been declared KIA, Cole said, Rook declared me KIA. He is the one who filed the status. Ward looked north for a moment, then east, the automatic threat scanning of a man who never fully stops. It served 2 purposes. It removed me officially from any record that could be used to connect him to the network's operations, and it gave me a reason to stay disappeared. A beat. I used that. I used the fact that he thought I was dead to get close enough to map the network's domestic structure. Every route, every placement, every name. The weapons trafficking was the surface. What runs underneath it is considerably more significant. Cole thought about the signal repeater in the tree line, the ghost frequency inside the jamming band, the cellular infrastructure placed weeks in advance. Ward had not been hiding, he had been operating. A one-man intelligence operation run against a network that had enough domestic institutional placement to feed classified mission details to a militia ambush team in a coastal Oregon forest. The information you've gathered, Cole said. Where is it? Safe. How safe? Safe enough that my being taken or killed tonight does not end it, Ward said. It goes to the right people regardless. He looked at Cole. That was not an accident of planning. That was the whole point. From the East Ridge, nothing. Rook had gone silent after calling Ward's name, which was its own kind of statement. Rook was patient. Rook was recalibrating. Rook was not finished. 41 hours. Cole needed 30 seconds to think, and he took them, which in an active situation is a luxury that costs something. He used the 30 seconds to look at his team at Hale, who was maintaining the North Side Watch with Tan Webb and Reyes at Varo, who was back at the communications unit with the focused intensity of a man who has decided this is his personal contribution to the outcome of the night and will not stop until it is made, and he let himself feel, briefly and without indulgence, the full weight of what they were actually inside. Not a trafficking interdiction mission, not a standard reconnaissance gone wrong, something that started as a classified intelligence operation and had grown over 31 months of one man's persistent and solitary effort into the most significant domestic intelligence package Cole had heard of in his career. And the man carrying it was standing on a fire road with a rifle being hunted by the former handler who had once trusted him with the worst work the network had to offer. Cole walked back to Ward. The North Element, he said. They stopped advancing. Yes. When Rook called your name, they stopped. He told them to hold, Ward said. He's working something out. What does he work out next? Ward was quiet for a moment. He wants me. He does not particularly care about your team at this point. Your team surviving creates complications, reports, investigations, questions about what happened in this forest tonight. But I am the existential problem. I have information that ends the network and ends the people at the top of it, including people your chain of command doesn't know are compromised. So he offers a trade, Cole said. Ward looked at him. He offers to let the team walk if I hand you over. Cole said. He might, Ward said. He might frame it differently. But the core of it, yes. Cole looked at him steadily. What do you want me to say when he makes that offer? Ward's expression did something complicated and then settled. I want you to say no, he said, but I'm not in a position to ask that of you. Your team comes first. That's the only thing that's been true every minute of tonight. My team has been alive every minute of tonight because of you, Cole said. That's also been true. The radio crackled. Not the SEAL team's frequency, a different frequency coming through the communications unit, and Varro looked at it with an expression Cole knew meant unexpected. Commander, Varro said, we're receiving on a channel we haven't been using. Someone is broadcasting to us directly. Cole moved to Varro and then looked at the unit. The signal was cleaned deliberately, so like the jammer had been locally narrowed to create a clear window on this one channel. Someone with control of the jamming equipment. Someone who knew exactly which frequencies to clear. Put it through, Cole said. The voice that came through was calm, educated, the voice of a man who has spent a lot of time making people feel that everything is proceeding in a predictable and manageable direction, which is a skill, and like most skills, it can be used for things that are not good. Commander Cole, this is a courtesy call. The engagement tonight was not personal, and the outcome is not what was intended. We would prefer to resolve the remaining situation with minimum additional difficulty. Cole looked at Ward. Ward's expression was unreadable. I'm listening, Cole said. The individual accompanying your team is a former contractor who has misappropriated sensitive operational intelligence. He is a liability not just to my organization, but to several government entities who would prefer the information he's gathered does not enter any formal record. I am offering safe passage for your team, full extraction, your wounded man gets medical attention within the hour in exchange for that individual. Silence on the road. Cole felt the team looking at him without looking at him, the peripheral awareness of 9 men waiting for a word. And if I decline, Cole said, then we have a longer night ahead of us, the voice said. And I should tell you that we have assets you haven't encountered yet. Tonight was a field team. What comes next is more specific. Cole looked at Ward. Ward was looking at the communications unit with an expression that Cole finally identified after a moment of searching his memory for what it resembled. It was the expression of a man who had imagined this moment and had in all his imaginings never quite resolved what he felt about it. "I need a moment," Cole said into the radio. "Of course," the voice said, Rook's voice, smooth and patient and entirely certain of the outcome. Cole muted the unit and turned to his team. He looked at each face in the dark. Then he turned to Ward. "Tell me something true," Cole said. "Right now, one thing." Ward met his eyes. "The information I have will expose 4 active intelligence placements in the U.S. government structure, the complete trafficking route from the Pacific coast to 3 international destinations, and the identity of Rook, his real name, his institutional affiliation, his chain of authorization." He paused. "If that information disappears tonight, it does not get reconstructed. It took 31 months to build. It cannot be rebuilt." Cole held his gaze for 3 full seconds. Then he unmuted the radio. "The answer is no," Cole said. A silence from Rook's end, short, controlled. The silence of a man recalibrating, not panicking. "That's a significant choice, Commander." "It's the only one I've got," Cole said. "So here's my counteroffer. You withdraw your remaining element, you stand down the East Ridge position, and you let my team reach the coastal highway. And I don't put your voice signature into the intelligence package that goes to every non-compromised channel I have access to the moment my comms open up." Another silence. Longer this time. "You don't know who you're protecting," Rook said. "I know exactly who I'm protecting," Cole said. "A man who spent 31 months doing a job that should have been done by people with actual institutional resources. And he did it alone, in the dark. So no, he doesn't go with you." The radio went silent, 23:49 hours. For 40 seconds, nothing moved in any direction. The north element held. The east ridge held. The fire road held its breath. Then Vero said almost to himself, "Commander, the jamming frequency." Cole looked. The jamming signal was strengthening, not weakening, strengthening, which meant Rook was not withdrawing. Rook was preparing. "He's going to make a push," Hale said from the north-facing position. "The 2 up here are moving again." "East Ridge is active," Tan said. "I can see movement." Ward had the rifle up. His eye was to the scope, and he was moving it in a slow, deliberate arc, tracking the East Ridge, reading the shapes and the spaces between them, with everything 31 months of solitary operational existence had built in him. "He's moving himself," Ward said. "Not repositioning, coming down." "He's coming to the road," Cole said. "Yes." Ward's voice was absolutely steady. "He wants this done personally. I told you he doesn't leave things to others when it matters. Can you hold the north element if Rook reaches the road?" "Not alone," Ward said. "Not and manage the East Ridge approach." "You don't have to do it alone," Cole said. He looked back at his team. "Hail Tan north element, everything you have left. Webb, I need you on the east side. Watch for movement, off the ridge, Varro. The moment that jamming signal clears even 1%, you push everything through every channel we have. Everything." "Copy," a chorus of voices. "Ward," Cole said. Ward lowered the rifle a fraction and looked at him. "Where does Rook come down?" Cole asked. Ward looked at the East Ridge, then at the road, then at the geometry between them. He was running it the way he ran everything, precisely, quickly, without sentimentality about the conclusion. There's only one line of approach that gives him cover the whole way down. It brings him to the road approximately 40 meters south of our current position. "Then that's where we go," Cole said. "All of us, now." They moved south 40 meters in under 30 seconds, which, given Reyes's condition and the general state of the team, was a performance that said something important about what human beings can do when the alternative is made clear enough. Cole positioned the team in a curved line that covered the east approach in the south end of the road simultaneously, with Hale and Tan anchoring the north exposure in a rear-facing position. Ward took the furthest east position, the most exposed position, the one with the clearest line toward where Rook would emerge. Cole moved up beside him. "You don't have to be first," he said. "Yes, I do," Ward said, simply, without drama. "He'll come to where he thinks I'll be. I need to be where he thinks I'll be." "That's how you get shot." "That's how I shed him on him," Ward said. "There's a difference, and it's not as large as you'd like." Cole looked at him for a moment. Then he moved to Ward's right side and raised his own weapon toward the east approach. "Then I'm here," Cole said. Ward looked at him sideways. "Commander." Ward High Cole said the same flat finality he'd used all night when a decision was made and the discussing was done. Ward looked ahead. After a moment, "He'll come fast when he commits. One chance." "One is usually enough," Cole said. "You told me that yourself, 11 times tonight." Something moved in Ward's face. It was brief and it was real, and it was the closest thing to a smile that Cole had seen from him. Then it was gone, and Ward was back to being whatever Ward was, focused, still occupying the moment completely. From the east in the dark, something moved. It moved with speed and precision, and the controlled aggression of a man who had decided that patience was finished. And Cole raised his weapon, and Ward raised his rifle, and 31 months of pursuit reached the end of the road it had been building toward since the night a sniper walked away from a shot in the Middle East and decided that walking away was not the same as being done. Rook moved the way Ward had said he would, fast committed with the controlled aggression of a man who had decided the time for managing the situation from a distance was finished. Cole felt him before he saw him, the way you feel a change in pressure before a storm announces itself. And then the shape came off the east approach and onto the fire road with a weapon up and eyes that were already moving to the position where Ward was standing. Ward fired first, one round. Clean and deliberate the way every round Ward fired had been clean and deliberate all night, the accumulated evidence of a man whose relationship with a trigger was not about violence but about precision, about the absolute uncomforting honesty of a bullet that goes exactly where it is sent. But Rook moved. Not randomly specifically, he moved the exact direction that minimized exposure to Ward's firing line, which meant he had anticipated the angle, which meant he had anticipated where Ward would stand, which meant that everything Ward had said about Rook's intelligence and tactical instinct was not exaggeration. It was just description. The round caught Rook in the left shoulder. Not center mass, not a killing shot, enough to turn him, enough to rock his balance, not enough to put him down. He went to one knee and came back up in less than a second, and the weapon in his hand was still tracking, still searching, still committed to the outcome he had come down the ridge to achieve. Cole fired twice from Ward's right side, and Rook dove behind the near edge of the road, and the shots went wide, and then there was a return burst from Rook's position, controlled pairs, disciplined, even wounded. The absolute refusal of a man who does not accept that being shot is a sufficient reason to stop. "Ward down," Cole said, and he was already moving left to change the angle. Ward went flat and rolled right, and the round from Rook's position passed through the space Ward had occupied with the particular intimacy of a near miss that leaves a mark on the nervous system, regardless of whether it touches the body. Ward came up in a new position, adjusted, fired again. This time, Rook was not fast enough. The second round from Ward's rifle found Rook's right side, not the shoulder this time, lower into the upper body mass, and Rook made a sound that was not quite a cry and not quite silence, the involuntary response of a body absorbing something it cannot metabolize into something acceptable. He went down behind the road edge. The fire road went quiet. Cole kept his weapon up and moved toward Rook's position in the careful, measured way that every operator learns, because the most dangerous moment in any engagement is the moment it appears to be over. Hale was moving parallel on his left. Tan had come off the north-facing position and was circling wide to close the angle from the other side. Ward stood up from where he'd rolled and looked toward Rook's position, and for the first time all night, he did not immediately move toward the threat. He stood still and breathed, and Cole could see in the set of his shoulders the particular weight of a moment 31 months in arriving. Rook was on his back behind the road edge when Cole reached him, weapon pulled from his hand by the combination of the impact and the fall, and he was looking up at the sky with the expression of a man running an internal assessment and finding the results unwelcome. 2 wounds, the shoulder and the right side, and the side wound was the one that told the story. He was bleeding steadily. His breathing had the particular quality that indicated the round had found something it should not have. He was not dead. But the accounting was clear. Cole kicked the weapon further away and stood over him with his own weapon trained. Hale moved up on the right. Tan circled to the far side. Rook looked up at Cole and then past Cole at Ward, who had walked to the edge of the road and stopped there. And something moved across Rook's face that was not quite surprise, because Rook did not surprise easily, but was the closest approximation available to him. The look of a man confronting a version of tonight he had not fully committed to as a realistic possibility. Ward, Rook said. His voice was controlled, even now, especially now. Ward looked at him from the edge of the road. He said nothing. You actually did it, Rook said. There was something in his voice that was not admiration and not contempt. It was somewhere between them, the complicated response of a man evaluating a student who has exceeded the curriculum. 31 months. I underestimated the duration. You underestimated more than that, Ward said quietly. Rook's eyes moved to Cole. Commander Cole, you made a decision tonight that will create significant complications for your career. My career has had complications before, Cole said. Not like this. Rook's voice was still smooth, even with 2 wounds in him. The professional performance of a man who had spent decades in rooms where controlling the narrative was survival. The people above me, the institutional infrastructure I serve, they don't disappear because tonight failed. They adapt. They've been adapting for years. Then they'll need to adapt to what's coming, Cole said. Whatever Ward has spent 31 months gathering. Rook looked back at Ward. And what are you going to do with it? Walk into a field office and hand it across a desk to whom you don't know which desks are clean. I know some that are, Ward said. I've had 31 months to be certain. You can't be certain, Rook said. That's the point of the architecture. You can't trace it far enough to know where the clean edges are. I traced it to you, Ward said. Well, 31 months ago, I couldn't see you clearly enough to understand what you were. Tonight, I can see you very clearly. He paused. The rest of it is the same work, just with better light. Rook was quiet for a moment. The sounds of the forest had begun to come back tentative at first, then more confident, the wildlife reclaiming the acoustic space that the gunfire had evacuated. Cole heard Vero behind him say something sharp and urgent. Commander, Vero said, comms are open. Full window, the jamming is down. Cole did not take his eyes off Rook. Send it. Everything. All channels. Already sending, Vero said, and there was in his voice the compressed satisfaction of a man who has been fighting one battle all night and has finally won it. From the north, the 2 hostile operators who had been holding and advancing, and holding again throughout the engagement, Cole heard them moving. Not toward the fire road, away from it, hard and fast into the trees, the sound of men who have just received information that has changed their calculus entirely. The jamming going down meant comms going up, which meant assets, which meant that the tactical picture for anyone still in this forest with hostile intent had just changed in a direction that favored leaving as rapidly and quietly as possible. Rook heard it too. He listened to the sound of his remaining element withdrawing, and he looked at the sky, and he allowed himself finally one moment of something that was not performance. Just a man looking at an outcome he had not chosen and understanding that it was nonetheless the outcome. How much did you get? He asked. Not to Cole, to Ward. Ward looked at him for a long moment. Enough, he said. The extraction asset arrived 18 minutes later, a Black Hawk coming in from the coast fast and low, guided by the signal Vero had pushed through the moment the jamming cleared. Cole had the team staged and ready long before he heard the rotors, because that was what you did when you had a wounded man and a long night behind you, and the particular relief of knowing the worst of it was resolved. Reyes went on to the aircraft first, which was right and proper, and which Reyes accepted with the grace of a man who has decided to stop arguing with the mathematics of his own blood loss. Webb went up beside him, which nobody questioned because Webb had been attached to Reyes' survival for the last 2 hours in a way that wasn't going to resolve itself just because they'd reached an aircraft. Hale organized the rest of the team's boarding with the quiet efficiency that Cole had come to rely on so completely that he sometimes forgot it wasn't automatic, that it was the product of a person who had decided at some point in his life to be excellent at exactly this, in exactly these conditions, without recognition or ceremony. Cole stood at the edge of the road and looked at Ward. Ward was not moving toward the aircraft. Ward, Cole said. I'll make my own way, Ward said. Cole looked at him. There are 2 wounded enemy operatives on this road. There are federal agencies that are going to want to talk to the man who has 31 months of network intelligence in his possession. There is. I know what there is, Ward said, not dismissively, just honestly. I know what happens when I step onto that aircraft. I become a subject. I become a case file. The information I have gets processed through the same institutional channels that I spent 31 months mapping for compromise. He met Cole's eyes. I have to deliver it on my terms. to the right people, through channels I've verified. If I hand it to the process tonight, the process will eat it. Cole stood with that for a moment. He didn't like it. He liked it considerably less than he'd have preferred. But he was standing in a forest where a man who should not exist had materialized from the dark and saved 9 lives and demonstrated throughout the most difficult 4 hours of Cole's recent career a quality of judgment that Cole could not honestly dismiss. "How long?" Cole said. "Until I deliver it. Until you surface, until whatever you're planning to do gets done and becomes something that the right people know about." Ward considered the question with the seriousness he gave to all questions. "Not long. The groundwork is already laid. Tonight accelerated the timeline. Rook being off the board changes the calculus significantly." "He's not dead," Cole said. "He needs a hospital." "He'll get one," Ward said. "Your people will see to that. And when he's stable, he'll be available for questioning, and what he knows, even what he's willing to say, will support what I deliver through my channel." Ward looked at Cole steadily. "This works. The pieces are in place. I just need to place the last one." Cole was quiet for a moment. The rotors above were maintaining hover waiting. He could hear Hale through the aircraft door saying something to the flighty crew, managing the situation the way Hale managed all situations competently and without making it about himself. "The signal repeater," Cole said. "The ghost frequency. Evidence of your operation in this corridor. My team documented it." "I know," Ward said. "When the debrief happens, and there will be a debrief, an extensive one, everything we witnessed tonight goes on record, including you, including this conversation." "I know that too." "So you won't be invisible much longer," Cole said. "Whatever you're planning, the window is not as wide as it was yesterday." Ward nodded once, acknowledging the math without disputing it. Then he said, "Tell them the truth, everything you saw, everything I told you, everything that happened on this road. Don't protect me from the record." He paused. "The record is the point. The record being honest and complete is the whole point." Cole looked at him for 3 seconds. Then he extended his hand. Ward looked at it for a moment with an expression Cole now recognized as the one Ward wore when something affected him that he had decided not to perform being affected by. Then he took Cole's hand and shook it, one firm exchange, the handshake of 2 men who have been inside something together that very few people will ever fully understand. "Ward," Cole said, "Commander, don't make me come looking for you." Something moved in Ward's face, that ghost of a smile again. There and gone. "You'd never find me," he said. Cole believed him. That was the thing, he completely believed him. He turned and walked to the aircraft and stepped up and didn't look back, because looking back was not something that helped. The debrief began before the Black Hawk had cleared the coast. Cole understood that was coming, that the moment comms opened, the clock started on the institutional response, and institutional responses did not wait for aircraft to land. He answered every question on the radio with the same calm and complete accuracy that he had used throughout the night, because there was no alternative that he would have accepted from himself. Rook had been recovered by a second ground team that reached the fire road within 11 minutes of the comms, opening a response time that told Cole, without anyone saying it directly, that there had been an aerial asset closer than 40 minutes for some portion of the night. Someone in the chain of command had known more about the operational situation than the operational situation briefing had reflected. That was a detail Cole filed away in the same drawer where he kept the other details that required a quieter, longer conversation than a radio debrief at altitude permitted. Reyes was stable. The surgeon at the Naval Medical Facility confirmed what Ward had diagnosed from a ridge at 400 meters in fog and darkness, a clavicle fracture complicated by the trajectory of the through wound requiring surgical intervention, but not life-threatening. Cole received that information and sat with it for a moment, thinking about the specific quality of knowledge that could produce that diagnosis from that distance under those conditions. Then he thought about the 31 months that had built that knowledge, and the cost of those months, and the thing Ward had said about the mission ending and not coming home being 2 different things. He thought about that for a long time. 3 weeks later, the classified debrief ran 11 days. Cole testified to everything. He was precise and he was complete, and he was honest in the way that sometimes makes institutional processes deeply uncomfortable, which was not his problem and which he did not treat as his problem. He described Ward in full: the rifle, the equipment, the ghost frequency, the cellular repeater, the 14-person hostile force count, The 11 eliminations, the radio interception, the conversation on the fire road, the handshake, the departure into the dark. He described Rook's wounds and Rook's words and the voice on the radio offering a trade that Cole had declined. He described what Ward had told him about the network, the 4 domestic placements, the trafficking routes, the institutional compromise, the 14 months of handler relationship, the classified mission in the Middle East, the decision to walk away from the shot and not come home. The investigators took notes. They asked follow-up questions. They brought in people from agencies Cole had not expected, people who had the particular careful quality of individuals who had been briefed on something before entering the room and were trying to determine how much of that briefing matched what they were hearing. On the 9th day of the debrief, one of those people, a woman who had identified herself only by a first name and a branch designation that Cole recognized as signals intelligence, set a folder on the table and opened it and slid a photograph across to Cole. It was a surveillance image, timestamped 3 days prior. A man at the edge of a federal parking structure in a city that Cole recognized by the skyline visible over the man's shoulder. The man was holding a document case. He was looking directly into the camera with an expression that said clearly and deliberately, "I know this camera is here. I am here on purpose. I want you to see this." Cole looked at the photograph for a longer moment. Then he looked up at the woman across the table. "He walked into frame on purpose," Cole said. "Yes," she said. "He wanted you to know he was coming. It appears that way. Did he make contact after this?" She held his gaze for a moment. Then she closed the folder. "That's outside the scope of this debrief, Commander." Which was Cole understood the answer. It was just the answer shaped into the form of a non-answer, the way institutional language worked, when the actual answer was too significant to be said plainly in a room that was being recorded. Ward had delivered it. Whatever he had spent 31 months building, the routes, the names, the placements, the architecture of something that ran underneath a weapons trafficking network, the way routes run underneath a field, he had walked it to a door and handed it across. On his terms. Through the channel he had verified. The way he had told Cole he would. Cole sat back in his chair and looked at the closed folder and felt something that he did not have a good professional word for, something that was adjacent to relief and adjacent to admiration and adjacent to the particular emotion that comes when you discover that someone did what they said they would do in conditions that made doing it genuinely difficult. It was not a complicated emotion. It was just a true one. 6 weeks after the debrief, the intelligence package Ward delivered did exactly what 31 months of solitary work in dangerous terrain had built it to do. 4 domestic placements were identified and referred for federal investigation. 2 of the 4 resulted in immediate administrative action and the opening of criminal proceedings that would take years to resolve, but that were now open. The trafficking route on the Oregon coast, the one Cole's team had been sent to photograph and had instead nearly died inside, was disrupted at 3 transit points, simultaneously, a coordinated action across 2 federal agencies and 1 international partner that could not have been coordinated without the specificity of Ward's intelligence. Rook, whose real name entered the federal record for the first time, was charged with 11 counts across 3 jurisdictions. His legal team was excellent, and the process would be long. But it was a process. It was a record. It existed in a way that could no longer be made to not exist. Cole received a classified commendation that he could not discuss and would not have discussed anyway, because the commendation was for something that the men who had actually made it possible could not be named in. He accepted it and filed it and moved on. Reyes recovered fully or nearly fully, with the qualifier that the clavicle had required a titanium plate and that the physical therapy was neither short nor pleasant, and that Reyes described every session with language that his mother would not have approved of. He returned to duty 8 months after the Oregon forest. On his first day back, he walked into Cole's office, stood at attention, and said, "Tell me we know who the sniper was." Cole looked at him for a moment. "Why?" "Because I'd like to not be in debt to someone I can't find to say thank you." Cole looked out the window, then back at Reyes. "We have a name," he said. "Whether we know where he is, that's a different question." Reyes stood there a moment. Then he nodded once in the way that soldiers nod when the answer is incomplete, but is all that's available. "Fair enough," he said, and left. Hale never asked about Ward directly. That was Hale. He processed things in the interior the way still water runs deep, And what came out eventually was always more considered and more accurate than what other people produced by talking through the same material. 3 months after the debrief, he stopped by Cole's office in the early evening when the building was mostly empty and said without preface, "He picked us, not the mission. Us." Cole looked up from the desk. "What?" "Ward. He watched us for 90 minutes before he fired the first shot. He said he was assessing." Hale leaned against the doorframe. "But if he'd just been assessing the tactical situation, 60 seconds would have been enough. 90 minutes was something else. He was deciding whether we were worth the cost of breaking cover, worth the cost of ending 31 months of anonymity." Cole thought about that. He thought about the man on the slope who had stood in the dark and waited with the patience of someone who had been waiting for a long time, who had looked at 9 Americans in a forest and run the math not just on their survival, but on whether they deserved to be the reason he stepped back into a world that had declared him dead. "He decided we were," Cole said. "Yes," Hale said. "He decided we were." There was a silence between them that was not uncomfortable. The silence of 2 men sitting inside something true. Then Hale straightened. "Good night, Commander." "Good night, Marcus," the surveillance feed. The recording was recovered from a coastal monitoring station 7 weeks after the engagement. Standard coastal surveillance footage, wide angle, moderate resolution, the kind of feed that runs continuously and gets reviewed only when there's a specific reason to look. A federal analyst looking for evidence of the trafficking route's vehicle traffic reviewed 6 hours of footage and found in a 12-second segment timestamped at 0041 hours on the morning after the engagement, a figure walking north along the coastal highway, alone on foot, in the dark and the coastal fog. The analyst flagged it, and the footage was pulled into the debrief record, and Cole was shown it on day 4. He watched the 12 seconds without moving. The figure was visible for approximately 8 seconds before the fog absorbed him. The resolution was not sufficient for facial identification. The gait analysis was inconclusive. The figure moved with the particular economy of someone who covered ground efficiently and without hurry, which was information but not identification. In the last 2 seconds before the fog took him, the figure turned his head slightly toward the camera, not stopping, not pausing, just a small rotation of a head on a body that knew the camera was there and was choosing in that moment to acknowledge its existence. Then the fog closed and the highway was empty, and the feed ran on for another 5 hours and 52 minutes of nothing remarkable. Cole watched the 12 seconds twice. Then he asked them to leave the room, and he watched it a third time alone. He watched the moment where the figure's head turned toward the camera, and he thought about a man who had spent 31 months learning to be invisible and who had, in the last moment before the fog took him, chosen to be briefly seen. Not for the record, not for the investigation, for something else, the acknowledgement of a witness, the quiet statement of a person who has done the hardest work in the worst conditions and wants just once for one camera in one coastal station at 41 minutes past midnight to say, "I was here. I did this. It mattered. It did." Elias Ward had walked into a forest to finish a war that his government had started abandoned and refused to name. He had done it without orders, without support, without the institutional architecture that turns individual action into something that gets recorded and recognized and placed in a frame on a wall. He had done it the way things get done when the people responsible for doing them have failed alone in the dark with everything he had and nothing promised in return. 9 men came home from a coastal Oregon forest because one man on a ridge decided after 90 minutes of watching that they were worth the cost of being seen. That decision did not make the newspapers. It did not appear in any public record. The men who benefited from it could not tell the people who mattered to them why they were grateful or to whom. The man who made it disappeared into the fog on a highway at 41 minutes past midnight and was not found because he was very good at not being found, and because the people who might have looked for him understood by the end that looking was not the right response. The right response was to make sure it mattered. It did. It always had. From the first shot on the ridge to the last step on the coastal highway, that Elias Ward had done the thing that needed doing in the only way it could be done, at a cost only he fully understood. Some men carry wars home. Ward carried his into the dark and finished it there in the fog, on a ridge above a forest where 9 Americans had run out of options and found one they hadn't known was available. That was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything.